Some of you will remember, most of you will remember, years ago when the rules for Friday abstinence from meat were relaxed in our church, and for good reason. The Friday abstinence rule was comparable to the rules which the Pharisees and the elders had made up over the centuries to be very specific about how they were going to fulfill God's commandments, the 10 Commandments. So they developed a group of 600 and some rules and regulations about how to do it, how to be a good follower of God, obedient to God. And that's a good motive to do that. And we had a universal rule that we commemorated the Lord's Passion every Friday by abstaining from meat. That's a good idea. It showed our willingness to do some kind of penitential act. It also showed our solidarity as a communion of disciples, as a group of disciples. We're not individual Christians, we're Christians in a group. The only problem is that most Christians don't have any meat on Friday to abstain from, then or now. So that's a good reason for changing the law, because the law is futile. I loved Friday abstinence. I love macaroni and cheese, you know. It was not a penitential day for me. So the purpose of the law was thwarted. In my case, because I like fish and macaroni, and in other people's cases, because they were practically starving to death anyway in most of the world, so they couldn't give up anything. But this brings out what religion is all about. Religion, even the word etymologically, means that which binds us to God. What we do to perpetuate the bond which, let us not forget, God has established with us through the person of Jesus of Nazareth. He tied us to himself. We respond with acts and words and deeds which reflect the bond that has already been established. Now there's a danger there too, because we always have people, good people, religious people, who are minimalists. They're the people who used to say, how late can I get to Mass to have it really count? Or, you know, when can I leave as early as possible and still have it count? I used to say, as long as you're there for the collection, it counted. But I was being facetious, obviously. I probably shouldn't have been. But then there are the maximalists. Those people who decide what they really have to do to express their religion, their bond with the Father through Jesus. And they do very good things. They have certain prayer forms or certain activities they engage in, which is their way of making external in their life for themselves and for others the bond that has been established between them and God. The unfortunate thing is that they often impose those maximal things on everybody else and then look down on everybody else because they're not doing them. That was the Pharisees. The Pharisees had taken all those wonderful, beautiful rituals that the priests in the temple observed, and they imposed them on everybody else. All the washings and the ablutions, which are wonderful. The problem is most of the Jewish people didn't live in a city. They lived in the country where there was no water to wash with anyway. So they were placing people in a bind. I hope we can see the difference then between religious practice, which is minimalist and maximalist. But our lifestyle, what we do day in and day out, what we say day in and day out, what we consume day in and day out, must reflect who we are. If we have been bound to the Father by Jesus, if a union has been established which is not our doing but a gift to us, we have to exemplify that. That has to become visible. And this is where each individual Christian has to examine continually their lifestyle to make sure that it exemplifies who that person really is. One who has been bound to God by Christ Jesus. And all of us will probably do it in different ways, but it must be done. Otherwise, we've made religion just some sort of spiritual, amorphous mass, small m, that has no meaning. To be a disciple of Christ is a gift from the Father. But we must be perceived as disciples of Christ, not only to exemplify and to externalize what we are for ourselves and for our own families and relatives, but for everybody. We have not been made disciples just for our own salvation. We have been made disciples to lead others in the same direction, to let them be bound by Christ to the Father. And if we're not seen as disciples of Christ, if it's not visible, if it's not apparent, if it's not perceptible, then we have failed as disciples of Christ.